T?
Yeah. Thank you, Brerik. Welcome back, travelers, to Legendary Lore, where, again, we are talking about Davriel and continuing the Children of the Nameless series. We're going to have a hard time coming up with thumbnails for this series. I am very worried. They're talking about all these different, the corpses and stuff, and Davriel's looking over the stuff. And Descendant says, yeah, my parents, they died 10 days ago. We thought at first that it was dusk willow poisoning, which is it's like a little like herb that if you OD on it, it causes you to enter a death-like state that looks almost exactly like this whole deal. And then shortly after that, her sister also suffered the same fate, and they put her into the church and all that stuff, right?
Davriel's just like, so is there a problem, or is your family just druggies?
So they, at this point, you also get two more demons, Gutmorn and Eledris. Gutmorn and Eledris are both, they consider themselves to be twins because they were created on the same day. But they're both basically, they're just demons. They're just generalized demons. They'll be important in a little bit, but we'll get to it. Basically going over all these different like frozen people. Davriel's like poking at people and trying to figure it out. And he's like, this isn't like just an immobilization ward like I used on you, because that was how she was captured. He just stunned her. And so basically he's talking about an unnatural chill. There's no puncture wounds. And he's knowing the blue. The muscles are taut. They can be posed. He's taking everything into account. He's basically a detective at this point. And Davriel's like, this is a waste of a trip. It's exactly what I said it was. And then remember Brerik, that lovable little guy?
Yes.
He comes out of a room and he's like, I think I found some tea. And so he runs up to him with a jar and he opens it up and he's like, this is time. Thank you, Brerik. And so, like, throughout this entire thing, he's trying to figure it out. And he keeps showing back up with different things that he, like, thought it was good. And at one point, he actually brings him, like, a thing that has tea, like a tea container. And Davriel's like, yes! And he opens it up and it's empty. And he's like, darn it! In my life, with all my luxuries, it's all for naught. And so basically this kind of just continues on for a bit. Brerik even said it here. If it's here, master, I'll find it. That was page 63. He's such a nice little guy. It says here that he came out with a jar of dried up garlic cloves. And he couldn't decide if it was tea or not. Like Brerik couldn't. And Highwater's just like shakes her head like, no, that's not what that is. That is not tea. You don't know what tea is, do you? I don't know what it is, but I'll find it. That is a child. Put it back where you found it, please. And he goes, riddle? Go ahead. Is it air? He goes, that was a good guess, but no, it's not the answer. And then Brerik smiles and he puts the pouch in his pocket. So like Brerik, he's trying to solve this riddle, but he just loves Davriel so much. He's such an obedient demon. He doesn't even care that he's not getting the riddle right. He just does it like it's a game. Is it air? No. Okay. Off I go. La-di-da. It's at this point that Davriel explains to Senda that the mark on their souls by the bog is less of a form of protection and more a sign of ownership, which is why there's no spirits or monsters trying to kill the people in the village, usually. So what they know from that is that spirits that attacked the place had to have been controlled by somebody for sure. There's no way that wouldn't have worked. But they still don't know why the bog's warding ability did not work on the spirits. They are at the church, the little mini church, the chapel kind of deal, right? And he looks at where, like on the door, where the symbol of Avacyn used to be, the collar, and it's been like sanded off because of course, everything that happened with the angels going completely cocoa bananas. So he says, why did you remove your symbol? And Descenda's like, well, after that business last year, the prior said, he goes, what business? She's like, with the angels. He's like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I didn't even know there were angels here.
Yeah, pretty much. And so he's like, huh, that seems like a rather large hassle. Like, she basically catches him up on everything that happened with the angels. And what's funny is that she doesn't even mention Eldrazi. Because Everything that
She
happened.
probably didn't know what that was.
Well, that's the thing. This is a really cool like sign or like an idea of the fact that what Emrakul did, the influence of Emrakul, was very localized because she had just entered Innistrad, basically over Thraben. So whatever was happening around the area, the things closest to her were the ones being corrupted most. And since Tasenda and her village were as far away from everything as possible, they're basically untouched. The odd angel here or there kind of thing. So that's why she's like, yeah, there are a few angels tried to kill us because
Some of them had tentacles.
Yeah, they don't matter. They didn't matter. So that kind of thing. And then I love this because Miss Hybrid goes, Dav, I gave you 3 briefings on everything that happened. And then Tasenda's like, didn't you notice the moon? And he goes, did it try to kill you too? And she's like, how could you be so shrewd and so oblivious at the same time? And it's such a great like little look at Davriel. Like he is completely detached. He is completely separate from the world that he is in. He is a true planeswalker.
He is in his own world.
Yeah, he wants to be left alone, and that would be the best deal. If he had the ability to create silence, he would probably do it. Now,
I love how he's detached but also eccentric.
yes, he's extremely eccentric because that's pretty much all he cares about. It's just like luxury, right?
Yeah.
The Davriel has the ability, his like special ability, is that he can reach into people's minds and yoink their spells for himself. Which is kind of super cool, but also means that if you're going up against people that don't know what they're doing, you're not going to get anything out of it. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
He also mentions that if he reaches into somebody's skull and that person has a very different ideology from him, then it actually hurts him. What I mean by that is if someone has a particularly heroic sense of duty or a sense of righteousness, then that hurts Davriel to reach into their brain because their minds don't match up. If he's reaching into a thief's brain, then he's already stealing from someone who steals, so it feels natural, the movement and the flow of it. So you could look at that as well as Davriel stealing different colors of mana spells. So if it's a black spell or a blue spell, he's fine just yoinking it out and doesn't really hurt him that much. But if he's trying to take something that's a white spell or maybe a green spell, then it's going to be a bit more difficult and a bit more taxing on him. He sends out the demons, mainly Brerig. He sends Brerig out as like a scout kind of deal. And everybody else is getting ready because they're pretty sure that there's going to be people coming to try and mess him up, right? And he says, well, the fact that this is the numbers continue to compound means that all those whisperers are most likely the spirits of your people. That these whisperers are not just robbing those people of their souls, they're adding them to the ranks. It's an army of geists specifically made from your village. And they say, well, the door was open from the inside. Was it a vampire? And they're like, no, borrowers were moved willingly. There's no signs of forced entry. All these different things are like being like come up with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of come to a conclusion like someone in here was the traitor and allowed the geists into the actual church because they wouldn't be able to get through because of the warding and all that stuff. So someone had to have willingly opened the door for them to come in. And that's what they need to figure out. And they think maybe it was the prioress, maybe it was this or that or that. This one guy had been stabbed. And the guy had no blood pulled underneath him because he was stabbed and then they robbed him of his soul. And so his blood just stopped moving.
I didn't know the soul is the part that bleeds.
Apparently, because it puts him in like a stasis because of like, I guess the shock to the body kind of thing. And she's like, yeah, that was Edwin. Basically, they're there in the thing, and Davriel's like, okay, well, who was the first person to see me do the things that they said I did? And they're like, oh, a guy named Edwin. He was a priest that he was he was around these parts, but he lives at the priory. And so Davriel's like, then we need to go talk to Edwin. And so as they're about to leave, they're attacked by basically a small group of Cathars. I'm not going to go into the full deal. It's a very cool fight. They like one of the things they have with them is a guy who uses the flamethrower, like the Geist-based flamethrower, and it's cool because normally those alchemists would not be seen as worthy, I guess, or like people that could be worked with as far as the actual church goes. But they're like, you know what? We don't want to die, and there's tons of terrible things, and we're basically all working with each other. So guess we got to go for it. You have this group of people that are all trying to do the thing, and they hear a person yell from the outside, Lord Greystone, do not pretend to hide. Our scouts saw you inspecting your foul handiwork in this poor town. Your hour of reckoning has come. No longer will you terrorize the approaches. Come out and submit to judgment in the name of the Archangel Sagada and the host of cleansing. And he's like, yep, I have to go visit the prioress. And so there's roughly a dozen guys here, and this big fight happens, like I said, and one of the demons actually dies, which is pretty crazy. They're basically burned to death.
Snap.
Yeah, because of the pyromancer. And so this whole time as these things are happening, and Descenda's like, stop, we just need to talk to them. If we can talk to them, we can reason. They're good people. And he's like, what? And she's like, they're good people. He goes, there's no such thing as good people. You have an agenda, and you follow according to that agenda. So if you want something, you're going to work towards that thing. If that means you go at odds with somebody else who also views themselves as good, then it doesn't matter. So while this is happening, Davriel reaches into the pyromancer's brain and is like, ooh, that's going to be useful. And so he stole that from him, right? And then he steals it from another guy, a soldier. He steals a summoning charm, which is basically a spell that allows you to bring whatever weapon you had to your hand. So the last weapon you touched. So for instance, this mug could be used as a weapon. So I would be able to summon this mug to my hand if I had this spell.
Ricky, you do that anyway without the spell.
You make a very strong argument. This is why we don't need magic. Davriel is trying to figure out, okay, what do we, like, how are we going to get around this? These things are happening. He's using his spells the way he can, and he's using whatever he has left. The thing is, whenever he uses a spell, it gets slightly less potent every time, and it becomes more and more difficult for him to do it. Right? And so after stealing the Geist Flame guy's ability to control the fire, he looks and he sees a guy. This guy is in the back and he's got a book in front of him, right? And he points at one of the demons. He goes, that's what is called Gutmorn, the winged one with the wounded leg. He is a demon of the Davriel depths, feaster upon souls, tormentor the Seven Princes. And Dara's like, oh, they brought a church diabolist. That's cute. And then Miss Highwater's like, we need to kill him immediately. That is Eladris Bloodslave, the other winged demon, also from the Davriel depths. They are not immune to Firegrot. The tome is certain. And and it's at this point, of course, the guy, the Grart, the flamethrower guy, is like, cool, let's do this. And Davriel's like, look, do not sing to Senda. If you do, it's going to kill all the demons because they won't be able to do anything. It's not going to stop them. A demon has no soul. It'll be destroyed and it'll be gone forever. And Descenda's like, well, what do I do? And he's like, just get out, stay out of the way. So there's this woman with long hair, and she charges at Davriel, right? And she takes out this like massive blue-white power, and she just launches the light at him. And she's like, I'm going, like, now you shall finally rest, immortal monster. And it hits him, right? Mm-hmm. And he just like blinks away the light, and he's like, oh, that was unpleasant. He's like, I'm human, by the way. And then we have the diabolist in the back. He points at Miss Highwater. Do not ignore the demon that has the form of a comely woman. That is Voluptuara, feaster of men, known as one of the most dangerous and wily of demons of the Nextric Flame Expanse. And Descenda looks at him like, Voluptuara? And she's like, he found it. Miss Highwater is extremely embarrassed by this. And then Eladris is engulfed in the flames. The fight basically ends when Davriel reaches into the diabolist's head and wrenches out a spell. Unfortunately for Davriel, the spell is literally just to draw things. He can make ink appear anywhere he wants. So like, say I wanted to write on a wall, I would just go, me, and I could make it like a thing show up, right? And so Descenda is basically afterwards, in the aftermath, she's putting people like next to their family members that have been like when they were taken, and because she really does believe she can put those souls back into their bodies, and she's trying to like push away the fact that any other time those demon hunters would have shown up, she would have seen them as the good guys and Davriel as the villain. Right here we have it. This is the scene with Gutmorn. He limped through the ashes, his leg wrapped in a bandage. The lanky demon knelt down, tenderly lifting something from the black char, a horned demonic skull. Ash flaked from it as Gutmorn lifted it to his face, and a low groan escaped his throat. An anguished, raw sound. His terrible eyes closed, his head rested lightly against the skull, and his posture crumpled into a stoop.
That was hauntingly a really good death scene for a demon. And next time we're going to figure out where we go with this. So don't miss it. Go ahead
For
and leave us
note,
a like.
this is page 93 for anyone that's been keeping up.